be a good folk. Just drinking my lemon zinger with honey tea. I have a bit of a chest cold. I am nursing back to health. I am Will from I'mYourFriend.com. Today I'll be going into surface joints, focusing on being able to join together any object in any scenario with any group by just placing them together in Thinking Particles. I'm going to use this guy right here. I've got a model of it inside 3D Max. I'm going to take his or her. This very flamboyant little mannequin here. Oh, that's good. Delicious. All right. Wonderful. Let's get started. All right. Surface joints. Let's get right into it. First off, let's create some boxes here. You could just make anything you want, any kind of environment, but these are just basic cubes, resized. And then this guy, you're gonna have to download it. I can't supply it because it's not mine, but it is free. You can go to Turbo Squid and get the dummy model, and here's the product ID. Download this, bring it in OBJ, and make sure it's sized properly. Let's see. Let's check our unit scale. We got meters. For 1 unit equals 0.1 in meters. So make sure that is same as mine. Also, timeline. You're going to want to start at 1000. That is the visual effects standard for studios. So, good thing to know. Also, for the UI, I've turned everything off here. User define. Let's start at 1001 and put your subsampling to half frame. And also, for the sake of time saving, I've supplied a Blackbox. It's sort of like a default startup hierarchy tree. So we go to load Woodman master default. Let's load that in there. So off the bat, it creates some nice little hierarchy. Neutron, active, Woodman environment, tools, just anything you want there. I put the wind, and then here's the joint groups. This is just to save time. I don't want to go through and kind of be redundant and rebuild everything over and over and over again. So it's good to have a nice startup default tree that I usually do that too. I always bring those in and build from there. Let's look at this real quick. First off, just delete these position born nodes. I created them so they would store, when I save the Blackbox, to be able to store these groups. Otherwise, when you bring them in, these would not exist, or they just wouldn't come in. Anyway, cool. So we have two object of particles, environment and Woodman. They're attached to, they're thrown into a group, given mass, and stored a group ID integer variable. So for environment, it would be 0, and Woodman would be 1. And I'll explain how that works later once we get into the jointing. So under system, you can leave that off for now. Forces, just the basic gravity, and shape collision. So that'll save you a couple minutes building. So first off, let's just get right into it. Once you get the Woodman, let's just import our objects. So just get the environment, pick, select these, and instance shape. We don't have to do any of this. This is already set in group. Neutron environment. Woodman, same thing. Select that. And I can deselect this point helper. Okay, let's pick that. Cool. All right, so change this effects to all, instance shape, and we got it in there. All right, let's go to perspective. Turn these off. Make sure your Thinking Particles is on, and we're at frame 1000. I'm gonna frame forward 1, and there we go. We have them in there. Amazing, amazing, incredible, friggin' awesome. Cool. All right. So let's just test the dynamics and see if our rules are working. I'd like to turn the system on. Oh, also I have this edit on the fly unchecked, and I'm just doing that for now. Once we start building the joints, I'm going to turn this back on, just so we can prevent corruption or crashing, stuff like that. So I'm going to leave this off for now just because the scene is relatively light, but beware, once it gets heavier, having this unchecked will create some frustrating issues. Anyway, all right, get the system on, play it forward, and here we go. I'll also make sure that real time is unchecked. So we're gonna play it, and it just falls apart, just like that. Boom, incredible. Holy crap, that's amazing. All right, now we can start to build the joints. It's a sort of simple setup, but it does have a bit of a build time and testing. So if you don't get it right the first time, just keep going through and double checking variables, input, outputs, all that good stuff that usually you'd have to do when you get into this kind of setup. So okay, so let's go back. I'm gonna, in the system, I'm actually going to turn off SC and forces just for now, so I don't run into any issues with that. All right, make a new dynamic set and name this joint system. Okay, so let's set up a memory node, and this will be, and you can see I have a memory master. If you aren't aware, it's always good to have a memory master node. It's good to have that up in the top and name it appropriately. And this is something you do not get rid of. You keep this, and all you do is store all your variables anytime you want new ones inside this master. Because, for those of you who are not aware, any memory node I create, and under, let's say this is blah. So now here's my memory node stored in the little list here. So in this, I will create, let's say, color, integer, such and such. So now I have this. Let's say I want to access that color integer in this node down here. If I get rid of it, now my variables disappear. So having a master memory node storing all variables in there, relative, it will, you can be safe to say, or you can be safe that these will never go away as long as you keep this. So, but I'm also going to create another memory master. This will be a memory joint master. Just because I do set up a, I like to separate the different types of variables. So in this, I'm going to have a relatively long list of variables. So I want to separate that from the memory master. Under here, I want to do kind of a universal variable storage. So, all right. So in here, I'm going to make a couple in here, and for control down the line. So this will be where we will create some float values, and these will be our main controller types for joint strength and surface distribution, such and such. All right, so in the joint master node, let's create some variables. First one would be let's do JNT, let's do lowercase JNT surface amount. Okay, that'll be the amount we well, I'll explain it as we go. So this one is joint JNT radius find. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's do that again. These are scalars, not integers. So let's just get the name, copy the name. I'm gonna remove. Let's do that again. Let's do a scalar. Joint surface amount. Right click, scalar, JNT, radius find. This one is JNT break threshold. What else? Joint type, and this will be an integer. JNT type. Joint type. This one we'll use 0 or 1. 0 is spherical, 1 is fixed. All right, we need a, what else do we need? Joint expand. That's a pretty cool one. I'll show you what that does, but we're going to use that as an integer. Joint expand. All right, now we got these arbitrary values or variables stored. Now we can lay them out. Let's make another memory node here. All right, let's start to get the inputs. Just drag them one by one. All right, we'll start to make sense in a minute, but bear with me. All right, we'll do surface amount. Pipe this in here. Let's zoom out. Holding Alt, left click, and drag, you can zoom out. All right, shift click this. This is going to be radius find. Shift click, yes, shift click and drag. This is break threshold. And here will be joint type. Joint expand. I like to have explicit naming when I do controller float values inside the in a set, just because it's a lot easier to really see. Abbreviations work better when you build a system like variables and groups and such. But if anyone were to come into this scene, they can clearly see what these do instead of and if I abbreviated these, it would be a lot more difficult to understand. So it's good to have explicit naming when needed. Break threshold, joint type, and joint expand. So this is actually, again, let's pay attention to what kind of variable type we are using here. This is a integer, so let's copy that name, get rid of that. Integer. It's probably my cold. It's messing my head up. That's 2 integers down there. And this is a float, so we'll get rid of that. Integer, joint type, joint type. Cool. So there we go. This is our main control station. So this is where we'll just be able to really quickly adjust. So we don't have to go in every set and rule and adjust it that way. So clear, nice and clear. Let's make another dynamic set. I'm doing Control D for a shortcut. It's nice and handy. So let's make another set and call this born. This is where we'll start with our surface position particles. All right. Okay, so let's start with this SC. We want our SC group. So basically, everything underneath this is going to be, it's going to have surface particles that I'm going to utilize with the joints later. Cool. And we need a position born. All right, and we point this to our surface position. All right, let's do pistol shot 1. Lifespan, let's do 2. We just need to add last 1 or 2 frames. So it evaluates in the first, creates the joints, surface detection, yada yada, and then goes away. Okay, zoom out a bit on this. Actually, let me just expand so you can see this. Okay. Let's get a memory. Surface position, particle into particle shape. Make sure this is on face. Position to position, particle to particle. So this will be able to create it on the surface. Okay. Actually, let's test this thing out. Frame forward. I'm going to change this to ticks so you can see it. All right, so we got the surface particles. You can adjust that so it will birth on the surface. So there we go, all throughout. Now, here's the cool part. The reason I stored some group IDs per different type of group is I want to be able to control and separate the amount on each defined surface. So group ID, let's grab that and give it an output. And we want to put this back to 1. Let's release the shot input. And I need to use, so let's get another memory node here. We need to access the surface amount as an output. So as of this, I could put this in here. Go back up to our controls here. Surface amount is at 0. Five, 8. So this actually should be an integer, but I'm just going to leave it for now. So you can see I can pump that up. So that's controlling that in there. But I want to be able to separate and control specific groups and surfaces. Since there's a lot less surface area on the woodman than the environment, I need to populate a consistent amount throughout the surface on its on the woodman versus the environment. Mainly because if you see, the way this works is it will find the other surface particles, create a parent in between, and then create that joint. But since there are no particles around his feet, for example, it won't be able to see it. So you got them spread out here. So I just want to birth them all over the surface and not have to worry about finding where these particles are born. So the reason I separated those was to let's create an X to 1. And let's put 2 inputs. And if you don't know how this works, it's probably one of my favorite nodes in the system. So we'll go to integer, and since this shot is an integer, we want to put this input into the shot. Okay, so this requires an X input, and that is an integer also. So that's basically asking, I need to find those IDs to separate the groups, and so I can control it. So I go into group ID. So now it's introducing 2 integers, 0 to 1, which I stored up here, and this is my group 0 and 1. So now I have control over 0 and 1. So anything I put into either of these will output appropriately and relative to it's a group. So I'll show you how it works. If I just add actually let's do an integer. This would be 0, and we stored our environment as 0. So if I set to put that up, it only affects the environment. If I shift to drag this, pipe it into 1, same thing. 1 now only affects the woodman. So I'm going to leave these at 0 for now. Name this env for environment. This is woodman. Not wadman, woodman. Woodman. And the idea is I want to keep this value up here controllable. Actually, I'm just going to change this to an integer. Get rid of this and add an integer. It's bugging me. Okay. Put that in there. Rename it surface amount. It's at 0 right now, but this is how I want to control it. So I have an available values here to multiply it. So I'm going to put both of them inside here. I'm going to set a standard default surface amount here. Now I have control. I can decrease, I can increase, and that's basically addition or multiplied on top of that. Let's actually change it to multiply. It's a lot better control here. So environment, I'm going to pump this up here. The reason is, if I just store one solid value in, I'm going to get a lot more surface. See if I need surface amount. So if I pipe this up enough to cover the surface for the environment, it's going to just overkill on the surfaces that don't require that much. So a lot of calculation. So I need an expensive amount of particles just to get to cover the surface. So that's why I like to separate it. Put that back to 0. And put the shot in here. So multiplied 1. So surface amount, let's set our nice default to, let's say 20. And let's up the environment to enough to where we can see it all on there. So let's do 8. Let's do 500. Might have to turn that down, but in any case. So Woodman will do 20. That's too much. 10. Maybe 8. So now I can always just decrease this amount when I need it to. So now I've got a relative, consistent distribution here. All right. Next, let's start to create our joints. So I am going to, inside the joint system, create another dynamic set. I'll name this dash joints. So put 2 more in here. This will be surface keep and joint create. All right. All right, in surface keep, let's start off by, we need to access the surface position. Let's go back one. Surface position. I need to start saying, basically I need to say, okay, look at my particles on top of, look at my particle and then look at my surface parent, essentially. So it's going to look at who am I attached to or was born upon, and also and search around for my neighbors, but only I need to identify the ones on a different surface, therefore creating a position joint, and that is the driver to create the actual joint between the two objects. So let's start to go through that. I need a P search, and I need to take the surface position and go to particle, and it's in the group. So basically it's searching for itself. But now I need to tell it to detect which ones to search for. So I need to tell it to basically ignore its own particle on its next to each other if they're on the same surface. So let's keep the radius here. We're gonna access that with our variable here anyway. So we need a memory node and put that in the surface position. And I also have to create a new variable, and this is we're gonna make a under memory joint master. Right click, go to particle, and this is gonna be my parent. So we need to put this as an output, and I need to go back into born, and we need to store that data in here. Make a memory node. Access my parent as an input. I need to put in here. So the output of surface position, so creates the particle. Now I need to associate that with its parent. So put that into here. So now it knows, and it's storing. Once it creates the particle, now it's storing. Okay, now I know who I'm basically birthing on. Now we can go back and do surface keep. And all right. And I actually need to shift drag this here. and pipe this into the found particles. So, all right, so let's move over. Now I need an expression. I need to basically say if I find both particles, but they can't equal to each other. So we need it is not equal to. So if you have you should have M3D conditions. This is Joe Scar's list, but it's also included with all TP releases. So we need it is not equal. I need to go A to there to B. So this is saying if you found what you're looking for, but you can't be equal to the same parent, then evaluate true. I also need a less than expression, so we need to go to helpers. Where is it, less than? No, it's in Blackbox's conditions. Less than. This is just saying as long as it's within the radius that I give it. So A to the surface particle and B to the found position or found PID. This is saying, you know, if it's within if it's less than the radius that I give it, and if it's not equal to my parent, then evaluate true. So I'll get that and bool to here and condition in there. Now we're starting to get a little heavier, so go back up to dynamic step. Check that on. All right. Let's go back down here. All right. Let's get our memory. Get a memory node here. I need to store some stuff. But before that, I'm just going to make a group here. Make sure it's to the surface position. And we're going to point this to surface keep. So these are going to be the new generated particles that are being used to generate the joint. So output out to on, and see if that works. So if we move forward, so it should take a bit only because it's evaluating all this stuff and it's searching at the same time. So you can see these red ticks are the new surface. They're the new found particles, but the value is a bit high. Radius. Put this to 1. So you can see, there we go. I'm going to change the surface position to dots so we can see this stuff better. All right. So you can see, and even that radius is too big. It's 2.5. Back, forward. Now let's turn these back on. Edit on the fly. Turn that off. See how much we could push it. 0.2. There we go. So now we're starting to see some results. So these are the new found particles. Now since we have that variable stored up here for radius find, let's put this like to 0.35. Now I can control that here, access a memory. We need the output to radius find. Radius. All right, go back up here. Now we got the control up here. So let's get a nice little area. You can see it's birthing on the ground and will be attached to the foot and the ground. So we got that. All right, now it's joint time. Let's get the joints. But first we need to make a memory node, put into surface position. We need to create joint joint 2 and a joint from particle. So in here, like a particle, we'll do JNT2, another particle, right click particle, JNT from, and create our inputs, joint 2, joint from, and the joint 2 will be, I don't think it matters, but let's try it anyway. Joint 2 is in the order. I believe you put in here and joint from goes up here. I think you can reverse it and it might still work, but we'll try that later anyway. So we need to store, basically the parents are the surface that the joints need to know where to attach to. So joint 2, joint 4, my parent outputs into here. And then also remember, we need to set, and these have to be turned on the same way. These get born. So let's go into our joint create. Okay. Surface keep, I need to access. And we need a couple memories. Get the memory. And we need joint from and to. Start off with joint from output. Joint to output. And let's create some joint nodes here. SC joint. This is where it will be created. Collision, our SC. Point that to there. We need a joint counter. SC joint counter. And point that to SC. And we need joint data. SC joint data. Point that to SC. All right. Let's connect these joint to joint. And I need breakable and velocity threshold. And let's do a Boolean. Obviously, we want those breakables, so turn that on. And our velocity threshold, we already stored that, so let's access that. Well, first of all, let's do joint from and to. Turn this on. Joint counter will control how many joints get created in each position. We need a threshold value to number of joints and the output to the on. So we're going to put threshold. We're going to check inside. Okay, particle 1 and particle 2 from particle 1 to particle 2. All right. Let's get our threshold 1 input visible. And let's access another memory node. This is where our variables, our controller variables, we need to access. So first joint type output, joint break threshold. Where is it? There it is. And joint expand. So this is an integer. And we'll put that in a threshold 1. And anytime you, so right now it'll essentially just create one joint per position. If I wanted to expand that, that way I could add more up here. That will just add more joints. So it'll double, triple, so and so when you add on top of there, just to create more strength, rigidity, better integrity in different spots. So the behavior acts significantly different when you add more joints per position. Actually, we need a world position. That's our actually most important input. So surface keep is where they get born. So that is where it's going to have to detect in world space and then create the joint. So here, I think that's it. Oh yeah, type. Put that into joint type. And break threshold into there. Now I want to create some, I need to be able to see my joints. So position born, joints, pistol shot, lifespan 1, speed 0, and also a size node because I want to make these joints a bounding box. So position, let's do world position. We just need, there it is, position to that. That's all we need. And let's see if it works. So first save, always save before testing your joints. And also turn on SC so it can actually detect what's going on. All right, let's see if this works. Save it, frame forward. All right, so it's got one joint so far. That looks like it is on the floor. So I'm gonna take the size, put it down a bit. Per call. It's only creating one particle, so it just finds a joint and creates. So it needs to go per call. There we go. So there's all our joints. Make this a little smaller, 0.2. And there we go. Now for testing, I'm going to go to SC. Let's go down to activate all. It's already checked. checking this on will just a good testing. Cool, so it stands still. Now let's add some force to it. Let's add that wind that I created earlier. Alright. Oh, wait, let's turn our forces on first. Forgot to turn that on. So gravity, let's see what gravity does. Alright. And that's just because our threshold, the braking threshold, is at 0. Let's put this to 50. There we go. Alright, let's add some strength to this. Let's put this to 1. Surface amount, let's just add another one just for safety's sake. And then joint expand. Start to turn this up here. And see what this does. There we go. It's nice and sturdy here. It's like, what is going on, dude? Cool. So that's working. And our joint type is at 0 as spherical. I could put 1 so fixed. And there we go. Nice and stiff, even more stiff. So let's keep it at spherical. Now let's create wind. In emitters, I created a nice, just a box, or I'm sorry, a plane. Simple plane. Turn off TP. Environment. Errors. What we got? Also, make sure go to local, and the x-axis is directed towards the woodman. I'm going to access that alignment for direction of emission. Okay, so in birth, I'll turn off system for now. So make another dynamic set. This is wind. And in here, so make a position born as well. Let's do particles 5 particles a second, and put into wind. Let's do lifespan. Keep it at 24. Let's do 75 variation. Speed. Let's do 150. Some variation. And direction. Let's get a node in here. On my node, pick the surface. And need a surface position. Node to node, face. I need my alignment. Let's get our input direction, alignment, and just a time interval so we can control when this thing starts for now. On to here, let's do 1010. We want to let this, let our system evaluate and settle. Okay. And invert. So I want it to start at 1010 instead of ending. Okay. Now I want to get some stuff going on here. Let's do particle. No. Data. No, we need a helper particle data. Boom, boom. And I need my velocity. Also, I created an arrow, just a basic cube that I modified, so you can create whatever you want, but I'm going to import that as an instance. So let's do geom instance. Boom, boom, pick. Now I need size. Let's do... This is pretty cool. I'm going to evaluate the velocity and create the size based on its speed. So let's just control that with an add and multiply. I'm going to put this will be divided. So they don't, you know, if the speed's going at 150, the size is going to be 150, which is huge. So I want to kind of want to normalize that a bit. And rename this to A divided by B, so we know what the math, so we know what it is. And put that into there, and let's just get a float. And put that in there. Let's just start with 5. So the velocity of this new particle, the wind, coming out of the emitter is controlling the size of it. So if it's faster, since we have a variation on the speed, since it's faster, there'll be the bigger ones, and obviously the slower ones will look smaller. Okay, and alignment too, just because we have a bit of a direction variation. Put that down about 32. I need alignment. Velocity goes into direction particle to here. And set this to user defined so it aligns appropriately. Alright, hide this. Actually get out of isolation. Okay, turn on TP. Let's see what this does here. Save it, move forward. Alright, so we got that working. These are way too big, so let's shrink those down a bit. Let's go to about 22. Alright, cool. Now I need it to affect my dummy real quick, so let's go back. In system forces, make another dynamic set. This will be wind. Real simple. Let's do active, anything in the active group. I need to search the wind particles. Let's do wind. Let's do a value about 10. Leave it at 10. Let's just add a quick force. Put that into the active. And I need the particle data of the found wind particles when it hits the dummy to then get the velocity. So that strength is going to add force based on the speed of the arrow. So let's do a float so we can control the additive or multiplied strength. Let's add some variation, put this to 0, and there we go. So let's see what it does with no joints. Turn this on, turn the joints off. Those drop, the wind starts to blow. Boom. Okay, we need one more input, and that's direction. We need the velocity to affect the direction. Otherwise, it wouldn't know where to go. That's why it looks all weird. Alright, now it works. Perfect. Boom. Turn on our joint system. Save it. Alright, it's working nicely. It's getting blown back. Like, what the hell's going on, man? What is this? And cool, so we got it working. Let me just move this guy. Up. You can see for the sake of visualization, let me turn that on. You can see the joints created right there at the top of his head. He's like, come on, man, I don't want to hang from the ceiling, bro, no. Look at that, perfect, works great. All right, so you can imagine the robustness of this. You can implement this. It's really modular. You can implement this into structures. Works really well with buildings. Imagine the pillars, concrete, any part of a structure, and every layer that makes up the integrity and real-world build of something. So, all right, so there's surface joints. I encourage you guys to apply this to other builds and structures, assets, see how far you can take it, but there you go. Cool. I'll see you next time.